Welcome back, Hunters. Sky Sensei here with one of my favorite Wagasa builds. So I'll show you guys the build, then we'll talk about the armor associated with it, some recommended talismans, and then a little demonstration at the end. I will say this is probably not like meta like 100% calculated most perfect damage, but it's still got fantastic damage and a very satisfying playstyle. It clears mighty monsters in less than 5 minutes, so farming for future builds gets much easier. The weapon that we are using for this build is the Kazesaburo with the inherited skill Spindance Saver. Now what this skill does is that it increases the grace period before the degradation of your energy gauge begins while your weapon is stored away. It also decreases the degradation speed, so ultimately it gives you more time to reposition and prepare for another parry, which will then boost your energy gauge back up to help you maintain that orange level 3. Now there are other skills that help boost the Spindance gauge energy, and I'll have future builds for those as well, but this one was just really unique since it plays around a special playstyle of, stowing your weapon away and then parrying to get back into the fight. So here's the skill tree. The other skills inherited along this weapon path are the Dodge Master skill. This is extremely helpful as it lengthens the window of your time to parry by 20%. Extremely significant and quite necessary for this weapon in general, since most of your damage requires parrying to increase your gauge efficiently. The next skill is the Parry Boost Fury. Now this boosts your attack after a successful parry. Now we actually have two of these skills on this build. One is inherited from the bottom left Wagasa Blade, which gives 9%, and the other is inherited on the Kazesaburo, which gives 15%. So a whooping 24% boost in damage after a successful parry. So as you can start to see, this build really focuses on stowing your weapon away to reposition, losing a little bit of energy, but then you position to parry, get that energy gauge back, and then attack immediately with boosted damage. Next up, we have the critical skills. Critical Master adds 5% to this weapon, giving a base total of 10%. So 1 out of 10 hits are going to be critical. This isn't great, but it's fairly hard to balance critical attacks in Wild Hearts compared to Monster Hunter. So for the Wagasa Blade, it isn't bad since most openings against the Kemono, you can get more than 10 hits off. This is actually where the next skill, Critical Chain, helps out. Once you land a critical hit, Critical Chain adds another 12% to your chance to crit again, bringing this up to 22%, so roughly 1 in 5 hits, which is much more ideal for the Wagasa Blade. This becomes way more prominent when you use the signature Parasol spin attack. Throwing out the Wagasa Blade to do multi-hits, you will see that 22% come up real quick. Plus, the armor I recommend in this build also does add to the crit. These are the main skills on this weapon, so let's actually jump into the armor right now. My recommended armor build is the Kemono modification path. Let's start with the Garuda helmet, which is also Kemono modified. The main skill you want here is Fatigue Recovery. This increases your stamina recovery speed. Now you want this because parrying does use stamina. Certain monsters like the Golden Tempest have multiple attacks, so even that little bit of extra stamina recovery between attacks will help you parry multiple hits. In addition, the Kemono unlocked skills include the Solar Protection, which grants you extra 5% damage in daylight. Finally, Deaf Ears nullifies monster roars, which gives you an extra opening to damage the monster or fill up your gauge. Most of the time this happens just before the monster moves to another area. Next up, the Garuda chest piece. Now this is also Kemono modified. This piece is exchangeable to whatever you want. I put this on for the Desperation skill, so a little bit more damage at the expense of my defense. Ideally though, with this weapon, you should be countering most hits, so you expect to get hit a little bit less and do more damage when possible. Of course, if you aren't at this level with this weapon, I would suggest a different armor with more comfy skills like the Moonshadow Crescent, which boosts health and defense. That way, even if you get hit, you're not at like a critical stage. The Moonshadow chest also has the Stowed Weapon Art skill, which increases your weapon stowaway speed. That really fits nicely with this specific weapon build that we made in this video. Next up, the arms are also the Garuda gauntlets as well, just the regular ones. This armor gives you a critical draw alongside more Desperation skill. With this build, you have a base crit level of 10%. Now critical draw gives you an extra 5% for 5 seconds after drawing your weapon. Ideally with this build, you want to go straight into an attack after a parry. Since this weapon does have Spindance Saver, you should be stowing your weapon away to preserve your energy gauge, parry to draw, and then you gain that extra crit chance and then go into an attack. This skill does last longer than Critical Chain, so off the draw you have 15% crit chance, and then during multi-hits, Critical Chain boosts that chance to 22% for the later hits. For the pants, we did the White Fang, primarily for the core boost skill. Again, I wanted a little bit more stamina since I love to parry, but sometimes I do get hit. If you're not a perfect parry player like me, sometimes you will attempt and miss the parry and get hit. You need enough stamina in these situations to make sure that you can still dodge away or slide in cases they follow up attack. Lastly, we have the legs here. For the legs, you do have multiple options honestly. The Moon Shadow legs are great for the Sprint Master skill and extra defense. Defense makes up for that little bit of loss from the Desperation skill, but Sprint Master lets you recover stamina while running. So this is very ideal for when you stow away your weapon. You can reposition while running, recover your stamina at the same time, and then be ready to parry the next attack. You could also do the Wayward Boots for the Resurrection skill. This lets you survive one hit when your health is completely drained. Now this is very helpful when you're practicing against tough monsters or farming endgame Kemono. Now finally, we reach the Talismans. Many of you asked for my recommendations in the previous build video, and I'll provide some here, but I do want a disclaimer by saying that this really depends on your playstyle and skills. Most of the Talismans have a variety of skills to help with damage or health or stamina, so quite honestly, I would suggest you put on Talismans that'll benefit you the most. If you find you need more health, go for health ones. If you need more damage, go for damage. If you want to do other alternative skills that are just fun to use, go ahead and do those. Some that I'll recommend here for this weapon particularly, the Parasol Dance Fury. This is definitely a great talisman to put on. With it, you'll be able to boost your damage when you level up the spin gauge. I've also added a Sleep Wielder talisman. This is great on weapons that do multi-hits to increase the chance of a monster becoming fatigued. For this weapon particularly as well, I added a 10% stow weapon or talisman, since I want to stow my weapon away quickly and then parry attacks immediately to grant me that extra 5% critical chance on top of the extra parry boosted damage. The final talismans that I added was just another desperation skill. I found another talisman that gives me 4% more, so that's a little bit more attack at the expense of my defense. I also added a poison wielder one. I don't know how useful this is. I usually notice that the monster will get poisoned maybe twice at most in a hunt, but it's just a little bit extra. Little extra damage over time, and it also gives me some defense, so I kept this talisman. As you play through endgame, be sure to keep checking back on your talismans. You will earn better talismans. Even with the same skills, they'll grant a little bit more percent. So be sure to check back with these talismans every couple of hunts and see if you can upgrade them to a better version. Okay, so that's it for the build. Let's do a little bit of a demonstration for this playstyle. You'll see here the monster, you can counter the roars. I actually missed it here. I'll show another example in a bit, but yeah, you can counter the roars at the start. That'll get you some parry gauge right away. With the Wagasa Blade, as you guys probably know, the small little bits of damage don't really do much. You gotta wait for those big openings. So here I parry. I know this attack is a 3-step attack, so after the third, I can do my whole combo, and I can actually send my Wagasa into a spin. There we go, got a bunch of damage, got a break as well. Here's an example of the critical draw-in effects. I'm waiting for it. I get the parry. I have 5 seconds here. We got enough time. And 2 or 3 attacks there? I think it was 2 actually. 2 of them were 111, which was the critical hit. So we had 2 critical hits out of 5. Another situation is if you miss the parry but don't get hit. You know, that is possible. Right here, I missed. But that's okay. I have critical draw for 5 seconds. And my third hit there was 32. That was a critical hit. Because of that damage, we got a break, and that made this whole opening. I countered the roar, so I still have some more time, and I get another break. So a good amount of damage. Even though I missed the parry at the start, didn't go as planned, but we were still able to capitalize. I mentioned before, stamina is pretty important with this build, so we're going to take a hit here in just a moment. But the important thing is that I can actually recover myself really quickly and get in a position to parry his final attack. Then I can go in for some damage, and I actually get a break. So that's about it for the Spindance Saver build. This Wagasa Blade is really fun to use. It's just so satisfying to me to be able to stow away your weapon, kind of prepare, and then parry that next attack and then get some damage. Very, very satisfying. That's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the blade, and let me know in the comments if you guys have other suggestions. Many of you commented on my previous video, and it was really, really appreciated. So until next time, take care, stay safe, and keep hunting. Ska Sensei's out.